Okay, so I think, yeah, that's it for announcements. So let's get to the questions. You guys can write down questions. You can raise your hand. I want to start with a question to you guys, and that was, um, if if we don't take into consideration time distribution, what surprised you the most when you created your pie chart? Did you guys have any epiphanies, revelations? Did you get your mind blown? Was there anything about your pie chart besides how you distributed time or the amount of time used for different things that surprised you?
Benjamin, you are unmuted.
Um, it kind of made me realize, wow, there's a lot of activities that I engage in that I like to just pretend that I don't engage in, but
Hmm.
I had to address them when I became to this task. So it's kind of like I was like, all right, yeah, I need to cut that out of my life, or I got to curb that, and it's a great stimulus for analysis. That's what I'll say.
Was there any specific activity that, well, can you tell us about one of the activities that you felt like you didn't want to spend time on, but that you discovered that you were in fact spending time on?
Aside from the biggest ones like browsing social media or I'm really, really addicted to Instagram. It's not good. Um, it goes back to that free time that I guess you were saying, like just the think tank stuff. You know, maybe I could be more productive in that area. Maybe I could just shift that into more of like working out or be a little more productive. Like, I mean, I'm sure I can think about cooler stuff if I'm doing a trail run or I'm just going out and doing something versus sitting around. I mean, burning more calories is always a good option, I would say.
Hmm. So, like the things that you would rather spend time on, like you said, being more productive. What type of experience are you looking for?
um, I don't know. It's like I have that. I'm one of those. I get that chronic feeling if I get to the end of the day, and then I'm like, wow, I totally could have, should have also gotten X, Y, Z done today as well. And like being more efficient in other areas, like I'm talking about like say like I wanted to listen to a podcast or something, or I wanted to do something like that was going to feed me some more knowledge, but I didn't have time to like. It's where I put stuff in the day. Like I could if I put something on top of something else earlier in the day, that's going to create a slot later in the day that I can get something else done. That's why I'm trying to stay away from that in my answer because I know you said time distribution is not what the subject of this question was. Um, but like type of activities, like I can find better ways to get things done and be more efficient with my time. That goes back to time distribution. Damn it. Um,
You can talk about time distribution in this question. It's okay.
okay, I'm just trying to abide by the guidelines. Um, trying to acquiesce to your request. Um,
I guess what I'm asking or I'm wondering about is, I mean, the essence of the pie chart is, or the question I guess now is, there's a certain thing that you don't want to do so that you can do something else, being more productive. And what type of what type of experience do you think being more productive would give you? Why is it better than wasting time on social media for you?
it's about being comfortable in where I'm standing in my life right now because part of me thinks that I'm doing great and I'm a lot better off than a lot of other people. But then I have to make sure I still have enough fire underneath me to say, hey, we have to keep moving forward and keep doing more things. And
Hmm.
it's like I want to challenge myself more because I know that I'm capable of more and this is not my ceiling. But it's very easy to get comfortable. And when I look at the activities that I engage in on my pie chart, I see that I have a lifestyle that it's really easy for me to want to do these same activities on a regular basis because I'm good at them and because I know how to do them. and I want to keep it that way because my brain and my body feels comfortable, and I've actualized my environment around me, and I'm succeeding and I'm doing well. And so like your body wants to stay happy and wants to be nice and be like, hey, like you're doing a good job and it's good for your self-esteem. But at the same time, you're like, you know what, I got to make it harder because I got to keep going. And it's balance of stress versus um, wanting to feel comfortable. And like, I mean, obviously you can err on the side of stressing yourself too out and you just run yourself down into burnout. But if you stay too comfortable, you're going to just continue to be comfortable, and then you just become ignorant over time because you only know what you know, and you stopped your intake and stop challenging yourself. So I guess that's really the kind of thoughts that the pie chart encouraged me to do. It's like, wow, could I replace this activity with something better? Like I could get rid of this and I could put reading into my schedule. Maybe I wanted to put 25% of my time into reading. Maybe I wanted to up 15% more of working out and stuff and see what that does for how. Didn't we talk about this a while ago? Like there's 4 different areas or something that make you healthy and stuff, or different areas. I forget. There was some like balanced lifestyle is not like if you're 100% physically healthy, you have to be balanced in your mental stress as well, your other areas of your life and stuff. And sometimes certain areas require more attention, and you have to.
Yeah.
It's like a backpacking trip. You have to adjust your straps as you're going, because as the journey gets harder and as you come up to different things, it's going to bear more on a certain part of your body. And you can't just stick with the same setting of gears the whole entire time because it's not applicable for that situation. You have to be adjusting. You have to compensate. You have to change, and you have to roll with it. So
I like that metaphor. Yeah, the different areas of life that we talked about was work, rest, play, and pray. At least that's one of the things that I mentioned on a Zoom call a long time ago.
yeah,
Yeah. But cool. Thank you so much. Thanks for answering.
I'm done talking now.
No, but I hope that your insight leads to some profitable change for you. Sarah Bender writes, mine was soulless as fuck and made me realize how often I go through the motions and follow through physically with my commitments, but don't always gain true joy or satisfaction. Sarah, are you available to talk?
Wait, there it is.
Whoop,
Can you
there it
hear
is.
me?
I can hear you. How are you, Sarah?
I'm fine, just at work. So I can talk for like a little bit.
A little bit is more than enough. So, Sarah, would you mind elaborating a bit? What do you mean when you say that you go through physically with the commitments, but that you don't gain true joy or satisfaction? What does that mean?
Oh, I do the things I say I'll do, whether or not I necessarily feel like doing them. And that's kind of all I do. There's not a lot of like variation. Well, there is, but it's all like pushing towards bigger goals. There's not a lot of shit I do just for me, just because I feel like it.
Okay. Do you feel like in the past, when you work towards something, has it been more important for you to come to a final product through like the process of duty, just going through the motions, and that product gives you a tremendous amount of joy? Or have you been more focused on having a process where every step gives you joy?
Option A.
So you're I almost said waiting for the climax. That's not a good
I mean, it's awkward, but accurate.
awkward but accurate.
Yeah, fair enough.
My life views right there. So what can you do?
I don't know. Because on the one hand, if you do want to accomplish big goals, it takes discipline and consistency, and there's really no way around that. But how do you have a life and find joy in the process along the way.
Well, in my mind, one of the two takes you by surprise, and one of the two is a more surefire way of gaining joy. I mean, whenever we work towards a final product, the joy or the happiness that we experience often is a surprise, because that feeling is built up because of anticipation and not because of the act itself. Whereas, when you do something where every step there is joy and there is happiness, we should be more aware that that is going to happen. But yeah, it's difficult to balance the two, because you want to be taken by surprise sometimes, or you should, because if you never get surprised, then that is a pretty sure way of saying that you're never going to change if you're not surprised. So what are you working on towards now, that where you feel like you're just physically committing to it, but you're not necessarily experiencing what you would like to experience?
I mean, for example, I decided to quit my company in a year's time because it's not a super healthy environment. So I'm really grinding hard this year so I can be very prepared to land on my feet wherever I shall go. So it's a lot of sometimes checking out, but still showing up and working hard.
Mm-hmm.
And just dealing with some bullshit till I don't have to anymore.
Well, that's good. But okay.
But
Oh,
isn't necessarily like a day-to-day super fun time existence? Probably not. But if I stick through, maybe it'll be awesome eventually.
well, hopefully. It's difficult to say.
But in the
I don't know.
meantime,
In the meantime. Well, in the meantime, while you're waiting for things to be fun, you better make sure that you're having fun. At least that's my philosophy. Um, do you feel like you have to work more to get to the point where you feel that sense of satisfaction or joy when you are committing to something?
yes.
Mm.
Yes.
So
But
you're
it's
not,
also like you can never work hard enough.
you can't? Oh, it sounds horrible. Why do you say that? Why do you think you have to work, or that you can work harder?
Because there's always like the next step to accomplish. Like once you gain proficiency, then it's moving on to the next. There's
Mm.
not a lot of like reveling in the I did it sort of thing.
Mhm. Mm. Do you guys know Kane Sumabat? Kane Sumabat, or at Timberwolf on Instagram. Sorry, we need to just, breaking news. The person who won the House Spirit Award is
Oh
currently here.
yay!
So I'm just gonna reveal the picture, and that person should be able to recognize him or herself, the gender of this award.
Definitely herself.
Oh yeah.
As he's eating ice cream.
That's, you seeing this? Look at that guy. Congratulations, Misha. Do you have any words? Anything you'd like to say?
No, I'm actually currently occupied. I'm eating. It's ice cream time. So
Is
uh,
that protein ice cream you're eating, Misha?
shh, don't tell anyone. I have a reputation to uphold.
You don't.
No, I know. Well, but seriously, that's awesome. I have no idea why I want it, but thank you guys or whoever. I don't know how this works.
The reason why you want
Jesus
it there,
Christ,
Misha.
Misha.
Yeah, get your shit together, or just sign up on Mirth's next course.
Uh, don't use
The
the Lord's name in vain, man.
okay
Yeah.
person whose gender is yet to be identified. The reason why you won, Misha, is because Kyle Estep decided to give you the award because he thinks that
Way.
he thinks that you are he thinks that you're one of those people that are is able to get the best out of life, which is admirable.
Oh, cool. Thank you, Kyle.
All right, mute Misha and let him eat his ice cream.
Can't take that guy anywhere.
Oh no. Um, yes, Ben Magazine. What are we doing? We're actually discussing the fighting monkey stuff that we worked on the last
Oh,
3
we
weeks.
awarded Ben Magaziner points this week.
You did, didn't you?
Yeah, 10 Ben Magaziner points. Who got them? Was it Rokas? See here?
Oh, oh yeah, Rokas got the BMAG points. I wonder what we're gonna end up doing with the BMAG points.
Nothing.
Nothing. But let's see here. I think Tigwe wrote something. No, it's not here. But Michael, do you have any questions that you would like to ask or get asked perhaps about the tasks people have done this week?
Well, really, I think if you're not sick of hearing me talk by now, you probably didn't listen to all the
Emma, Miss Kim's here. Oh.
Yeah.
So really, yeah, if there's any questions, I'm more than happy to answer them. But I feel like we've covered a lot of good ground the past month, and I've learned a lot. So it would be nice just to take this moment to thank everyone for their efforts and showing up and engaging. It was a lot of fun for me to kind of virtually meet a lot of you and see what you're up to. You know, like everyone who followed me on Instagram and whatnot, I followed back and I'm checking out your pages and I'm seeing what you're up to, what you're training, and looking at everything. So it's been fun to kind of dive into this world a little bit because I think I was a little bit ignorant to it prior to coming here and meeting all of you. So it's been a nice learning experience. But yeah, I really have nothing else to say. I don't want to give any more headaches to people. But if anyone has any questions, I'm certainly here.
Well, what surprised you the most in working in this kind of format and with these people?
I guess it was surprising per se, but what I noticed the most was kind of doing the same thing. I mean, like their practices, like what they were posting, kind of what they're aligned with, what their goals are. There really was like a very little variability there. And I felt like people really didn't have kind of their own style, so to speak. And I kind of wanted to see a little bit more of that. Like, who are you? Where did you come from? You know, what experiences did you have, and how does that mold who you are and what your practice is? And I wish that we could see more of that, just anywhere, not just the OMU, but as a whole movement culture, a physical culture, whatever you want to call it. That people were bringing in a little bit more of their flavor, their taste to add to the body. Like, because I want to get inspired by what other people are doing because I'm not exposed to their culture or their lifestyle. They're maybe not coming from a place that I came from, so they can show me things or teach me things that I never otherwise would know exist. And I feel like kind of we're just copying, pasting what's popular right now. Someone said something very nice, so then we think that that's the thing to do now. You know, why does everyone think like handstands and splits are like the coolest thing in the world right now? Like, why does that mean that you're a mover? Like at the time,
It's the movement basics, Michael.
right? So exactly. So I'm kind of dumbfounded on a few of those things. Like what is movement? What is a good mover? I don't know, but I don't think that they're necessarily those things. I don't know why we're putting such a high premium on them. So that's the kind of one thing I noticed, that I wish there was more individual style, more people willing to like put themselves out there and be like, this is who I am, this is where I came from, this is part of my culture, this is what we do, and take it or leave it, because it doesn't matter if you like it or don't like it. Like, this is who I am and I'm cool with it. I'm happy. So yeah, that's just a thought there.
Yeah, this is something that I also miss in the movement culture, because it's such a neutral platform, or I guess physical platform. People should be able to do all these different things, but there is a lack of expression and individuality. And do you personally think that that is because people haven't been taught or encouraged to express themselves? Or do you think it's because, due to whatever kind of society we're living in, is we are not building strong enough or distinct enough identities?
Yeah, definitely. I think that's a great point that you make. And I think that maybe we've been taught too much, right? Like maybe the educational system has kind of fed us this way the whole time. So we're always kind of looking for the answer somewhere else, or having to mold ourselves to whatever that teacher is saying or what they want us to memorize. We're kind of aligning with that so we can pass the next test or make it to the next grade, or get the degree and whatnot. And those are like big accomplishments, but at the same time, no one's ever really asking, what are you interested in? What are you passionate about? Oh, you don't like this subject? Okay, like, well, maybe let's find something else that you're into and you enjoy. How a very interesting quote is, how long does it, or why is it so hard for us to sound like ourselves? And why does it take us so long to sound like ourselves? And that's an interesting thought to have, because it seems like most of the time we're just mimicking others, which is, of course, a very interesting way to learn. But yes, like you're saying, the way that our society is set up, I don't think from the time that we're kids that we're really trying to find out what we like to do. It's more or less we're aligning with whatever is like, whatever our environment is. We're put in the classroom, they're telling us we have to memorize these things to pass. So we do that. And then it goes on and on and on. And we're never really finding out, what am I interested in? Who am I? What do I want to do with my time?
Yeah, it's difficult to find. I mean, yeah, why did that quote? Why does it take so long for us to sound like ourselves? I think I heard like an answer to that quote, and it's something along the lines of because we're afraid of who's listening. I mean, it's very hard to find your own voice if you're too preoccupied with how the listeners will respond. So, in the search for your own expression, how would, let's say that you had the opportunity to have a teacher. His name is Michael Ryan, and he's presenting you with some new tasks. And he's not giving you a very specific reason as to why you should be doing these movements. And he's not necessarily giving you like the most linear progression or all the technical cues. What would you do, or how would you use these tasks, or this, well, whether we call them instructions or inspiration, how would you use that to reinforce your expression? Or perhaps change it?
This would be for me?
For you, under the tutelage, or the cruel tutelage of Michael
So
Ryan.
I am now like being instructed by myself, per se.
Yeah.
So the way that I hopefully came across was where I was never telling anyone that this was the way. And I think that that's very important because, like, why would we do any movements? Mm-hmm. And I think that's an important question to ask. And that's kind of one of the tasks with the map was kind of to look at, what am I doing and why am I doing this? Because someone else told me that was great. They quoted some scientific studies, so now I believe that it's amazing. So then I do them thinking that that's going to be the outcome. Or am I actually doing it with like a speculative mind, thinking like, does this really like produce that? And what does this mean to me? And is this important for me to actually be doing? Or am I just doing it because someone else was very good about like marketing it and selling it to me, and they made it sound like it was amazing? So then I believe that. And maybe the whole deal is just you feel good about that kind of placebo effect that you're getting, where maybe the practice in and of itself might not even be anything, and it might not be important to you at all. But for some reason, as a culture, we're deeming something more important. So we go and we take ourselves to that. So hopefully, as a person, you're kind of just playing with these tasks and trying to look at your world or your training from a different point of view, to kind of see, what have I been doing? What is this new thing here? Or what is it teaching me about myself and what I have been doing previously?
Beautiful. That is awesome. Thanks, Michael. Just wanted to read something that Stephanie wrote here. And I love this. We are not taught to critically think. We are taught to be critical of others instead, typical as a comparison mode. So we need to foster communities that encourage instead of criticize. We need to critically think about and question everything that is not taught. Our educational systems are now about regurgitation, and this translates to movement. Mic drop. Oh wow. Stephanie, are you available or free to talk now? Yeah. Let's see.
Ryan, you need to silence yours. Feedback.
There you go.
Sorry. As I said earlier too, I have a lot of feelings about this, so I might get worked up a little.
Mm-hmm.
Are you there? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Are you good? Jack is done.
Yeah.
So yeah, I teach a lot of different things. I teach academically, and I teach movement, and I teach pole dance, and I teach all these kinds of different things. And the beauty of doing that is realizing the communities that surround all of us in those things. And in the pole dance community specifically, there is a really intense turn to I want to say like feminism in a way where we look critically at the way in which we internalize misogyny itself. And part of that is lifting each other up as pole dancers. And so in all the pole studios that I've had the opportunity to work at, which has been a wonderful experience, everyone is sort of celebrated for what they're capable of doing in that moment. And then when I translate all of this work into what I describe as the more masculine fitness movement world, that hasn't quite come to the same space yet. And it's much more because of that comparative, measurable analysis of what needs to be achieved and what can be achieved. And so it's a community shift, in my opinion, and it's a community viewership shift. And then on top of that is that secondary piece of what I think is critical thinking. Critical thinking is lost in our academic systems because we are still in that place where you have to memorize things and regurgitate them instead of learn how to use those pieces. And as we have like information at our fingertips like this, I do see those systems changing with our like educational pedagogy at large. People are starting to understand how to teach people how to integrate ideas, and that's great. But one of the initial points of integrating ideas is first knowing thyself, right? And so that's where I think you were getting at, John, about when we need to, what we need to know about ourselves first in order to start to move forward. I think that critically thinking applied to ourselves about what we like, what we need, why we do things is not something we basically do on a regular basis. And that why we do things is why we are so typically inclined to just regurgitate even movements and splits and handstands because they look cool and they get a lot of likes. Caffeine just kicked in.
Quoting Benjamin Carey here, Stephanie is woke. So, so you would you say that one of the fundamental issues is that we don't start with ourselves when it comes to critical thinking?
Mm-hmm.
So how
we accept all sorts of institutions and systems that we are told are correct, and it's sort of my joy in life to poke holes in those systems.
So how would you advise someone if they were going to start looking with a more critical thinking lens at themselves? Where do you start?
The mundane, the things that you don't even think about, start asking yourself. I call it the 5 whys. I do this with relationship coaching a lot because that's my other world. So when I ask someone, like, if you want to be committed to another human, ask yourself why 5 times and really get to the heart of why that thing is. And oftentimes in a lot of the work that I do, people land like by the 4th why, they land in fear, and then they can't even get to the 5th why. So for example, here I could say, like, I'm just going to use one example that comes in my life a lot, because I deal with people who are transitioning typically from monogamous relationships into consensually non-monogamous relationships. And so in that specific arena, I'll say, okay, so you want to be in an open relationship, but you want to have what's called a primary partner, or someone who you identify as more like a monogamous partner, even though you're dating other people. Ask yourself why. And they'll ask themselves why, and they'll say, well, because we live together. Okay, so what? Why does that primacy matter when you live together? And they'll just go through that train of asking themselves consistently why, until they hit the point where they say, like, well, because I'm afraid, because I've never done it a different way. And it's like, okay, that's the real place that we're landing at. And if you're afraid because you've never done it a different way, like, if you do try it a different way, what risks are there?
That's solid advice.
5 whys. Really, 5 whys is something that, like, if you actually do it, makes people's brains explode a little bit, and it's a wonderful thing to watch people go through, and then sort of soothe them at the back end. Like, it's gonna be okay. You're gonna be fine. You're great. You just did brain work.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting, like the parallels to so many other things that we talk about in regards to movement. Like everyone agrees that it's good to have a childlike behavior when it comes to movement, right? You need to play more, but we're not like that mentally.
Mm-mm.
It's kind of almost, for me, it's almost a bit arrogant to assume that you should be able to play like a child if you're not willing to think like a child. And if you want to think like a child, that doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be stupid. You just have to act less informed and be more inquisitive. That's why they ask why so many times to the most mundane questions, because they want to figure out. Oftentimes, they want to figure out if it actually makes sense. Like, why is the sky blue? Oh, it's because something reflects something, and that something that is being reflected is blue. And then they ask why, and the answer they get is because light is waves that bounce off of reflective surfaces, and if it reaches its point of destination, it will create some sort of color or shading on that area. And then they ask why, and then we go, just shut the fuck up. Right? I don't know why. And then they can go,
this element of, like, who is the parent, right? If you are to be the parent, you're going to provide them with like 17 different answers. And they're going to be like, so I have no idea. Fantastic. Great. That's perfect. But oftentimes as adults, when we start to ask why, people will not engage, and they just shut down, and they think you're like dumb or something like that. And it's like, no, like, this is actually a practical, useful exercise of why you do the things you do. Why am I drinking coffee on a day-to-day basis? What does that say about our culture? What does that say about what I'm supposed to produce? What does that say about what I like? Like, all of those kinds of things. So yeah, I think I'm gonna be done monologuing now. Woo.
Yeah, and I mean, it's like, please don't. This is very interesting. I mean, asking why is kind of like mental play, at least in my opinion. It's not necessarily about coming to a conclusion or becoming more informed about something. It's understanding whether or not something is relevant to you as an individual or the world at large. So, I mean, whenever a child is asking their parents why, it can be because of curiosity and the need to feel some sort of safety, knowing that there's something, some sort of substantial truth out there. But oftentimes it's also a mental tug of war. And that mental tug of war, that mental play is, how you train your brain. Training your brain isn't necessarily about, like you said, gulping or like being gluttonous with information that is being regurgitated.
Yep.
Yep.
It's just learning how to think about those things and what do we do with all of this information. You can literally find answers to so many things just with Google real quick, right? And you can find articles and you can find backed up knowledge. And it's like, okay, now how do we take that knowledge and how do we use it in a way that's applicable to us? And how do we ask questions about whether that knowledge is even right? And what does that knowledge actually say about the state of the world right now? And like, where do we poke holes in that stuff to say like, well, no, this particular article is in fact showing us a certain kind of regurgitation about the world. And not necessarily, and people usually do this by looking at, like pharmaceutical agencies, who's funding the research and things like that. What I really like to do is look at like the measures of studies and see what questions they're actually asking, because the questions will have an inherent bias. And again, just to reflect back on what I know best, which is relationship research, like when you look at studies on relationships, romantic relationships and monogamy, the questions that are asked are like, have you ever had sex out of wedlock? That's an old style question, right? But they never ask the follow-up question of like, does your partner know about it and is it okay? And like that follow-up question would frame such a different experience with research at large, because a lot of the population has consensual non-monogamous experience, but they just don't get to talk about it. And so there's this huge just gap in the way in which we ask questions that becomes fucking problematic and shows what we actually do value and what we're trying to prove. And that's why just, I think quantitative research is crap, but that's an entirely different conversation.
So, I mean, it's very interesting, though. Would you say that there's a lack of question leads to a lack of a more individualistic expression?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So, what kind of questions have you asked yourself that you believe led to you being able to find your own voice? Or more like find something that's similar or close to?
I think the thing that I do that's probably, Ryan could probably speak to this because he has to deal with it all the damn time, is I ask other people why they do things when I don't understand it. And that really helps me to see the world in a different way. If I'm like, well, no, like this is how the world works and Ryan does it completely differently and I'm annoyed by it, I'm like, why do you do that? And I'll ask him why, like 15 different ways until he answers it in a more critical way. And then he'll be like, you're trying to get that answer out of me. And I'm like, yeah, you're right. And so the thing that I like to do is ask other people questions about the way that they live in the world, because that helps me understand my own limitations. Not everyone likes to do that though, and they don't like that sort of work, and they don't have partners who are like receptive to their irritating questions like mine are. So I think that's a big, for me, is learning how to ask questions helped me figure out my own space in the world.
So in asking questions, I mean, asking questions is a type of confrontation. And usually people, especially on the internet, they're much more comfortable creating confrontation by coming with an opposing view, which, isn't necessarily the best way. Would you say that asking questions as a way of confronting yourself or making people confront themselves, does that make people more or less defensive? Or is it maybe a different type of defensiveness?
I think it depends again on your audience, as we keep talking about the people who are sort of walking this and why you would do it. There are definitely, especially times when I'm asking like relational partners questions that do flare defenses. And I think the best thing I can do there is also answer the questions myself, right? Communication is a co-creation. And so in that co-creation, you have to also be willing to disclose information as well. So if it's a shared experience of answering the same question that's being asked, I think that's one way in which the defenses come down, because you're also experiencing the world. The other thing is you can qualify a question by asking it, contextualize it, right? Like, why are you asking this question? Am I asking this because I want to like push you into a corner and blame you for something? Or am I asking you because I'm just honestly curious? And I think that you have to build trust with people as that co-creation exists. So on the internet, it's a hot mess. I don't venture into that territory typically. My territory has usually come in interpersonal relationships, particularly family and romantic relationships. I'm hedging towards the internet because I have that whole sphere as well. But when I've asked those, usually it comes down to how you moderate it and how you're able to say, like, encouraging that talk, encouraging that conversation, letting people actually experience and explore it and see what happens. And that's why I really like the interface of actually keeping comments open and seeing what happens. And it can be like a hot mess, but it can also be really fun and enlightening.
But when we want to start asking ourselves questions, like a common denominator when people started to discover more about themselves, or they confronted themselves, like we did with the pie chart, a common thing that happens is that, you know, you start feeling guilty, which in turn might not be, it is a motivator, but it's not necessarily the best motivator at all times. If you were to encourage someone to start asking themselves more whys, ask themselves more questions, trying to think a bit more critically about themselves, what kind of perspective should they have in that process? What kind of mindset do they want? Because a chance is that you start confronting yourself too much, and then you become paralyzed because it's just too much to deal with.
Yeah. I think as an educator, I can't impose a frame of mind. I think that's something that someone has to do for themselves. So I would interrogate the emotions that surround the pie chart experience. Why do you feel guilty? What does that guilt mean to you? And how do you see that guilt being a part of our cultural infrastructure of, just to be honest, like,
I think
Stephanie's too woke for the internet right now. They're trying to shut her down. The patriarchal hierarchy is trying to prevent this from happening.
It's the digital glass ceiling right there.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now.
That was really weird. Like everything just went black and then it all came back. Where was I at? Oh, everything moves in. We're expecting this like linear progression, right?
Mm-hmm.
As just a human, when I talk about what I do, I'm a cyclical person. I think in cycles, kind of like the seasons, right? And I return back to questions regularly too, which is another thing that like drives Ryan bonkers. But like, if you think about it, you don't have to be linearly achieving to still move forward. You can constantly go in this like cycle that it almost looks like a cyclone, right? As you gently move forward. But I can't impose that on other people. I have to like let them see, like, do you feel guilty? Is that guilt going to serve you somehow? How is it serving you? What do you ultimately want? Like, for some people, guilt is a really good motivator, and that's why they want to do what they want to do. But if you get down to it and you're feeling guilty because you're not being as productive because you've been told that you need to be productive in a certain way, and that productivity doesn't actually serve you in that way, like, give yourself some fucking downtime, recover, understand that, like, you can't be constantly motivated to do things. You always need to have downtime. You can't also be constantly motivated to create things because you need to, at some point in time, have inspiration, right? Like, it doesn't come when you're going, for most people. So it's about, how do you frame the world? How do you how do you achieve that? But that's part of that, like, look at your emotional experience. Is that emotional experience helpful to you? If it's not, change something. If it is, keep going. But then we can talk about emotions for hours. That shit's also my jam, but you know, that's
Well, thank you very much. I'm sure that everyone appreciated that. I did. That was good.
Oh, we got a cool question from Scott here. To Michael, what does it mean to fight a monkey?
So the basis of the name in a lot of cultures, animals will be represented by different body parts. So the monkey was always related to the mind. So we always have our minds who are telling us what we should be doing, what we shouldn't be doing, kind of playing games with ourselves. You know, you have this little guy on your shoulder being like, go there. No, go over there. Do this. No, do that. So that was the idea. You're always fighting that monkey that's on your back, telling you what to do and how to do it. And yeah, playing with that. So that was kind of the idea, philosophy behind the name.
Was that self-evident? Because I didn't know that till now.
It's just something that Joseph has mentioned on several occasions, but he doesn't talk about it that much, to be honest. I mean, a lot of people ask him that question, like, what does the name mean? This is retarded. There's no way, like, this is going to make it in marketing. No one knows what this means, you know? It should be like something fit, but, and sometimes he'll just say, oh, I just like the name, you know, and he'll just leave it at that and let them go. But from what I can tell in my conversations with him, that is the idea behind it.
I like that. That's better than what I thought was you and Joseph had to fight each other at some point. And the training revolved around that.
Yeah, it's that too, right?
Don't gloss over that. You guys are going to fight soon, right?
I guess if you want to call it that, it's just me making sure I don't go to the hospital and him working on his new footwork that he learns in boxing class.
For you guys who don't know, I saw in the stories, what was it, a couple months ago, like, you guys are going at it, and it looks very violent, and there might have been some blood.
It's all love though. Like Joseph is honestly like a kid, and he gets very competitive, and he likes to play. And you know, it's basically like if you ever wrestled with your friends when you were a kid. You know, it's a good time. But yes, I mean, he's much bigger than me. I mean, he's like 6'6". So he can throw his weight around, and he moves very well, right? So it's part of the reason why I have to train so hard, because I know when I go to meet him, I better be sharp, because I'm going to get smashed if I'm not.
That's a great motivator and incentive for training. That attaches meaning very clearly. Jarno thought it was spanking the monkey. That, if Jarno, if you want to train more for that, DM me. We have a special program. A lot of wrist and elbow mobility, because you can run into issues, especially if you're not switching hands. You get some asymmetries. But yeah, contact me after. False grip, definitely. Reverse that internal rotation grip. Michael, do you have any specific questions for people? Anything you'd like to get feedback from?
Yeah, I mean, if anyone, I don't have to say it now, but just writing me a message later, any type of constructive criticism of how I could have communicated better, things that I can improve on, I'd appreciate it. Just for me personally, I watched back a couple of the webinars, and I really feel like I need to be more well-read. Like I need a bigger vocabulary to pull from. I feel like I'm such like a simple mind that I don't know, like I can get it out of me, but I don't feel as if it's so well articulated. So that was one thing. And I said or a lot, which was like, God damn it. But you don't realize that until you watch yourself back, right? So there were some things. But as far as just the overall experience for you guys, it would be cool to hear a little bit, and then how I can improve as an instructor for the future would be really great, because a lot of you are very smart and you've had a lot of experiences in this. So it'd be good to get some feedback like that. And it doesn't need to be positive, honestly. So just know that. You don't need to be like nice.
Okay, Ben Magaziner, the man, says, Michael, curious what advice you might give the group if you were a member. What would you want out of a pursuit like we're engaging in, periodically dipping into different disciplines? How might you organize a practice given this context?
So usually I would have like a home-based practice. So something that either you love to do or something that's really giving back to you in some way, shape, or form. And that would be your home base. That's where you would go to spend most of your time. This is something that could last for your lifetime, that you'd be doing till the day that you died. And then you go and you visit other people and see what they're up to and get inspired, and maybe somehow you find things that interest you or make sense for your life, your context, and then you start pulling some of that in. I do think it's important to mention that I think that we should have more of an incubation period with a lot of the stuff we're getting exposed to. It seems like a lot of times we're just seeing something and then immediately putting it into practice or like going to teach it, when I feel like we should take our time with it and really explore what it is that we're doing before we're like putting it out there. And I think through that we can start finding out more of what is there for you personally, rather than again just copying someone else straight up. So I'd like to see, like, I would take something like this. If you have different instructors coming in all the time, this would be like maybe your own personal thing that you're doing and really exploring with like an open mind to be like, okay, how is this relevant to me and my style and my life and what I love to do? And how can I maybe make it more interesting for myself? How can I pull it into something that's really giving to me and adding to my practice that I already have established, rather than kind of jumping from thing to thing, never really having like an internal access, never really having a home base and knowing who you are and what you enjoy, and kind of just flopping from thing to thing. So I would use it as just something that would be serving as inspiration to see how can I make my practice more interesting, rather than just here's the next thing, here's the next thing, here's the next thing. And then you're putting all this stuff in your bag, but you're like never taking anything out of your bag. So you end up with this like big bag on your back that now you're like lumping around and you have all this baggage, but really you're unable to move at that point. It's like too much, if that makes sense.
It does. That's good. I remember, DJ, we had a talk about OMU like before OMU started, and we were trying to like think of what should we ourselves mentally compare OMU to. And I remember one of the things we started talking about is like traveling, which is funny because you're mentioning the backpack, you know. If you travel, if you get to explore a lot of different countries, you're still going to, well, most people are still going to need the sensation of a home, which could, like in my case, is my main practice, what I stick to physically. And at the same time, like if you travel around and you keep like bringing souvenirs from every single country that you visit, that's when you end up with this overloaded backpack, and you're not going to be able to enjoy wherever you're going because you're tired. So what does your like main or base practice look like, Michael?
So we're doing something that's basically like where I'm every day, it's kind of like a zero form type thing, but I'm moving more. I'm not just standing in place for like 20 minutes a day. That would be ridiculous, right? but I'm doing something where I'm checking up on myself pretty much on a daily basis. Now, it really depends if I'm more beat up or less beat up. I might need to take more time to really kind of clean myself. Like we would refer to it as like cleaning our joints. So it'd be a lot of stuff similar to what you guys are doing with joint rotations, but it's not focusing on any type of isolation. Like I'm thinking in a lot of images, I'm thinking how my big toe would connect to like my, cervical vertebrae. Like I'm trying to make as many interesting connections that I can throughout my body and be thinking even like metaphysical, like quantum physics while I'm doing the practice. So I'm just all over the place. Like the moon's up there. I see the sun's back there. And I'm playing with all these types of images. And then I'm also decoding movements where when I do the movements, I'm thinking, what does this mean? Is this a sign? Right? Like there's gestures, right? Like this would be like a gesture. This would be a gesture. So I'm thinking in terms of movements, like what do these gestures mean culturally and where did they come from? And kind of getting down to what would a human body need in order to stave off the aging process for as long as possible? How can I like extend out that decline as long as I can? That's really what I'm interested in. So that's my home-based practice. I'm looking to age as well as I can and not be destroyed at the end of the world. So finding out my bad habits, trying to create better habits. It's a time where I can be very conscious about what I'm doing. And if I'm not beat up, something like that really could be just free form, the open room, the music is on, and I'm playing. I'm dancing around. Maybe my hips feel a little bit tight, so I'm playing around with how could I open up my hips? But it's not like I'm not doing stretches, but maybe I am doing stretches, but it's not like, okay, I need to like sit into this thing or stay here. It's constantly moving, so it more look like a dance. And then I also engage in a lot of partner work, like things like wrestling and boxing. I think that those are just practices that I enjoy because of where I came from. I don't even really think there's much sense of agency in that. I'm a male. I was born in a certain place at a certain time. So those maybe things would be more important to me and I'd want to engage in them. But at the same time, I think there's something very, I hate to say the word primal, about wrestling with another human being. I mean, I don't know how long this has been around for. And I like to look into things like that as far as my practice is concerned, is like, what have we been doing for ages? Like, what would be important for a human body to be exposed to on a regular basis? How can I get the most amount of variability in my practices? What makes me happy? What brings me joy? What do I feel good about when I'm done, or what makes me excited to go do it? Like, training is not ever really a chore anymore. It used to be, where I felt like I had to go do the thing or I'd feel guilty about not training. But at this point, it's basically I'm doing it because it all feels very good and I enjoy it. And yeah, that's basically a thought that I have on it right now. I don't know if that answers your exact question, but I'm not like following some program. I mean, there's class times that I go to and there's like certain things that work for my schedule. But it's not like I have a set like amount of like reps and things that I'm doing. And at this point, it's really hard for me to work out other than like me like doing like a zero form type practice. Working out by myself just wouldn't make sense. It like brings me very little joy. Even to like work with the dragon pearl, the wooden ball, or doing things like that, just it's so empty once you start training with people all the time. You're like, I need to go find someone. Like, I want to go throw this ball back and forth with someone, not like mess with it myself. So I think that's something that it takes time, and it's something I certainly wasn't used to. Going to the gym and working out was like time for myself. But at the same time, if it's not shared, like there's so much more you can do with a partner. It makes it so much more interesting. So a solo practice really is just for me to make sure I'm taking care, not getting injured, or taking care of any aches and pains that I have, and kind of modifying whatever I need for myself. So I'm dictating everything. It's where the variables are stripped away and I can really focus in on like what's going on with my body, where am I at today, how do I need to go about the rest of my day with this information, and then just taking care, like I said, trying to extend that aging decline as well as I can, And then everything else is like going out and exploring and kind of throwing myself into the fire and testing that. Because if I just stand and do my own solo practice every day and like, oh, wow, he's such a good mover. Like, look at how open his joints are, blah, blah, blah. But then I go to the wrestling class and like, where's that openness then? Or like, I'm just getting smashed. So I like to throw myself into the fire and say, is this really working? Am I keeping like my structural integrity when I'm actually like, someone is trying to yank my head down and like throw me onto the floor? Like, are the things that I'm doing actually making sense, or am I staying in my nice little bubble where I feel everything's super controlled and easy? And I could stay there for the rest of my life and feel very good about myself probably, but I don't think that that would be the best expression of how I want to go about my life physically.
Michael, I have a specific question about what is your intent when you're trying to battle like entropy? Like you said, staving off aging. Are you just checking in internally of what's maybe you're lacking movement somewhere? Is it more of a structural alignment connection? What is your intention while you're doing that?
So a lot of it is looking for deficiencies. So like, where are your future injuries going to occur? Like, where would problems be? Like, if you were under a large amount of stress, what would break first? Like, what's going to go first? And this will like probably come out to play with all of us. Like, let's say someone like has their right foot a little bit turned out and like they're collapsing on their foot a little bit right now, and they're just in their 20s or whatever. And it just keeps going and it kind of goes unchecked. And like over the course of time, maybe it like wears down the joints a little bit more, or maybe it like throws off your gait a little bit. So there's a little bit of like in deficiency there. And then we take enough steps, we live our life enough to where that's going to get compounded over the years. I mean, imagine decade after decade after decade. So you get to the point where you're 80, 90, and now that leg, like you have to drag it with you. I don't like it. If you see elderly people, I mean, it would be interesting to see if they had a more intelligent practice when they were younger and willing to invest time in themselves when they were younger, how much of those little aches and pains that they're having now when they're older could have maybe been mitigated by an intelligent practice where they were checking in with themselves and figuring out, oh wait, like something's going on with my hip. Like I'm missing something here. Something's off with my gait. And then being smart about their practice and seeing if they could maybe modify it or improve their movement. So then it would just, that wouldn't show up so soon. It would show up later, right? And then we have to talk about gravity. Gravity is smashing us down at all times. So I know like the big thing about alignment, like anti-fragile training is very, very popular now, and like using bad positions and whatnot. And I get it. Like you need to be able to go everywhere. You need to have a ton of variability. But if I drop my head, if I'm in forward head like this, gravity is going to be smashing down on me at all times. By the time I'm 50 or 60 years old, that's going to be a problem. There's going to be like no choice. I'm not even going to be able to get back here because gravity is taking me where I'm slumped like that. And then it's just going to get worse and worse and worse. So I'm definitely thinking a lot about gravity and how it's acting on us at all times and what the repercussions of that are going to be literally probably 50 years from now in my own body.
Interesting. Yeah. Thank you for that perspective. Does anyone else have any questions? We have time for probably one more. Daryl, question for Michael. I saw you post a video working with seniors a while back. I would like to know, how do you apply Fighting Monkey principles towards training and helping the older generation? What do you help them practice, and how do you incorporate exploration in play? Could you give us just a quick answer for that, Michael, please?
Quick one?
As much as possible.
Too long. I think it's important to tell Daryl that it's hard to teach elderly people because if you're younger, they don't feel as if they're just, who's this kid? You know, like what can he offer me? What could he know? So it's very important that first you build up a rapport and you build up a trust with them, because you can't just be proposing outlandish things to elderly people because they're going to think you're a kook. So you have to really show them that you care and that you know what you're doing and that you're there with their best interest in mind. because they are pretty fragile and it's hard for them to move. So if you throw them into something too quick, it probably won't end up that great. But the same things apply. It's basically, you could do the same exact things that we've done in this whole webinar with elderly people. Maybe you would need to talk it through them a little bit more, explain to them what they're doing, because a lot of them are going to be more rigid and they're going to be setting their ideas of what exercise should be, but they're usually very smart. So if you are articulated about it and can show them like, look, like this can help you, then I think pretty much they all see, wow, this is more playful, this is more games, this is more fun than me like sitting on an exercise bike. But let's say, for instance, some guy is shuffling. He's having a hard time really like shifting his weight and walking. I would use the practice ball and I would try to, like, he's standing and like moving around, I'd try to hit his foot. And like I said, don't let me hit your foot with the ball. So therefore he'd have to shift the weight onto one side to really lift the other leg to get it up. Now, granted, you have to be very careful. You have to be ready to honestly like dive on them at any time if they're going to take a fall. So you have to be very careful with this. That's a reality. If someone falls and breaks their hip, like, they don't really come back from that very well. So you have to be careful in what you're proposing. But at the same time, like another thing I was using, I was talking to Brandon, like balloons are amazing for elderly people because one, like, I think it makes everyone pretty happy to have balloons around. You know, like if someone's walking around pissed off with balloons in their hand, run away, okay? But like getting balloons, having them blow it up, and then seeing if they could keep it in the air. Like just games like this where they have to move a little bit more and engage with something and use their mind a little bit. But yeah, all the same principles apply, Daryl. It's really just you kind of regress it a little bit and then just make sure that you know well, like you trained it enough so you know the variations, you know what it feels like, you've taken enough time with it so you can go present it to someone who maybe never would look at it and be like, that's stupid. I don't see myself doing that. I mean, I've practiced with some very stern people, like very like, they like they wanted to play, but they didn't want to play in front of other people, so they were afraid. So we had to go in like another room at the senior center to like let them like let loose, but they loved it. They were doing coordinations, they were playing with the practice ball, but they didn't want others to see them in that playful mode. So there's a lot of different dynamics about it, but I would say for Daryl, play with it enough yourself to where you're literally bored and then keep playing more with it. And then see, okay, what's here and how can I present this to someone who maybe can barely even stand on one leg, someone who like their spine is completely locked. How could you make the practice ball or something like this relevant for them, or make it a game where they're feeling successful? That's also important with elderly. With people in the OMU, it can be hard on you. You don't necessarily have to be feeling successful, but the elderly people, you know, I don't think they want to feel very crappy about themselves at this point. So you also need to be like making an environment where they feel very safe and that they can fail, but at the same time, you're allowing them to be successful most of the time. Anyway, sorry, that was my short answer, DJ.
Thanks. No, that was a great answer. And we want to thank you again for everything you showed us and taught us this unit.
Of course, thank you.
Up next is OMU After Hours.